Hey Guardians, I just want to let everyone know that I do have both a Twitch and a Twitter, and I'm very active on both. Feel free to come give me a follow on both, links in the description. In my opinion, this is the best PvP energy shotgun in the game. Guardians, the Reprise Garden of Salvation weapons have dropped, and thankfully, 1, they are craftable, and 2, they're actually worth the grind. And today, we're talking about Prophet of Doom, and as you all know, I don't normally review special weapons all that often, mainly because they're really just not as interesting to talk about as primaries. The special weapon meta is pretty well solved in both PvP and in PvE, but this weapon brings something new to the table, something that has made it replace my Compass Roses and my Matador as my go-to shotgun in the energy slot. Now, we'll talk a little PvE here, but this is going to be more of a PvP-focused review since this is an ARC precision frame shotgun, and even with the PvE shotgun buffs, I do still lean more towards rapid-fire shotguns and lightweights just due to their more generous ammo economy, plus slugs are just very good general utility weapons in PvE. But regardless, we'll talk a little about Prophet of Doom in PvE also. But jumping right into PvP, as you all know, I mostly use my shotguns for defensive purposes, meaning handling is a must-have for me. Prophet of Doom is the fastest, snappiest shotgun I've used since pre-nerf quick draw, and you'll see how. But jumping right into rolls, for your barrel, I would personally recommend Barrel Shroud for the handling. For your magazine, accurized rounds or assault mag, personally I do prefer accurized for the range. Then from there, either a handling or range masterwork depending on your preference, I went with handling. At base, that gives you 77 range with an effective reach of 6 meters and a handling stat of 55. Now in that third column, really threat detector is the only option I'm a particularly big fan of. In the fourth column, opening shot or closing time. Now I'd imagine most of you, given how shotguns have been for years, are going to expect me to recommend opening shot. And you're actually wrong this time. On this weapon, I would 100% stick with closing time. Closing time will give you range, accuracy, and handling when the magazine is below 50%, and the lower the magazine is, the higher the buff goes. Now, unfortunately, I can't find any really solid numbers on how much, but it seems with range you're getting 10 to 20 range, and I can't find anything solid on the handling, but with this perk, this is quite possibly the fastest shotgun in the game. When I first crafted mine, I went into the firing range in the Enclave just to try it out, and I could not believe how fast the swap speed was. Then from there, I went into a private match just to get a better feel for the perk and to compare it to some other shotguns. Now, I used Ace mainly because the stow speed of your primary does affect how quickly you can swap to your shotgun, and at 50 handling, Ace is a good baseline. 50 handling is in the realm of not particularly good, but still usable. Now, I also ran double kinetic mods, which is what I usually run with Ace, and I also put quick access sling on the shotgun, and as you can see, the swap speed with one shell in the tube is borderline instantaneous. And keep in mind, this is also without threat detector procced. Then from there, I loaded 2 shells in the tube, and while it's a little slower, it's still very fast, and in an actual match, you'd likely have threat detector further boosting your swap speed. Now, if you have 3 or more shells in the tube, it does get noticeably slower, but even then, you still have threat detector helping your swap speed. And that's the nice thing here, you're doubling up on handling perks. If you're at 3 shells or above, you have threat detector helping your handling. Below 3, and you have both threat detector and closing time boosting it. So, just for the sake of comparison, I did also spend some time comparing it to other shotguns, including a threat detector Matador, quick draw Retoad Tail, and slick draw Compass Rose, and Prophet was faster. Now, just to be clear, it wasn't as fast as I'd really like, given how many weirdos are using their special weapons like primaries these days. I'm looking for a ready speed as close to instant as I can get, but this was still very fast. Then, the next thing I decided to test more in depth was range, to see how much closing time was helping my range. Now, Darcy unfortunately does not measure in decimals, but it did have consistent reach right before the 7 meter mark. Now, of course, right at 7 meters, it would fall off as is expected around that range. And this was still on par with my Compass Rose with Barrel Shroud, accurized rounds, opening shot, and a range masterwork. Now, lastly, I'll also briefly mention the origin trait, Photo Inhibition. This weapon deals bonus damage to combatant shields and targets with an overshield. Breaking Breaking a combatant's shield disorients them, breaking an energy match shield also disorients nearby combatants. Now, obviously, the disorient does not work in PvP, but it seems the damage to overshields does, as I had a couple of instances where it chunked overshields pretty damn hard, which is very useful if you're fighting a Void Titan. So, with all that in mind, what I will say is if you're one of these morons who does nothing but joust with special weapons for a whole match, then there are better choices out there, since for that purpose you should really have Slide Shot, and Prophet does not have Slide Shot. You'd really want to use Retold, Compass Rose, Fractithus, maybe Imperial Decree or Astral Horizon, something along those lines. But if you use shotguns defensively, which is what I think shotguns should be reserved exclusively for, and the ammo economy should reflect that, then this is arguably the best choice in the energy slot just due to how fast closing time makes it. I will say, with pellet RNG being what it is a little less consistent with the one-shot kill than an opening shot shotgun, likely just due to opening shot boosting your aim assist. But in my opinion, the insanely fast swap speed still makes it worth picking over an opening shot shotgun, since it's better to be able to get the shotgun out in time when you need it, and with the insane swap speed on this, that will be the case nearly every single time. Now, alternatively, you do have 1-2 punch if you want to make sure a follow-up melee will kill, barrel constrictor if you want to maybe just go for some clips or something of the sort, or of course cascade point if you just want to meme around a bit. But even with those other perks, with all the benefits that closing time provides, I still think this is the best option in that last column. So, for the energy slot, Prophet of Doom has replaced Matador and Compass Rose as my go-to shotgun. This really is an amazing PvP shotgun, and if you do play PvP, then yes, it is worth getting your Garden of Salvation runs in for. Just don't forget to pick up your quests from Hawthorne so you can buy a red border from her after. Now, talking PvE, here's the thing. While shotguns did get a PvE buff this season, I'm still not really a huge fan of precision or aggressive frames for PvE. If we're talking pellet shotguns specifically, then I would still take a rapid fire frame or a lightweight frame just due to the more generous ammo economy on them. Plus, I hardly ever see pellet shotguns in PvE unless it's a 1-2 punch shotgun compared with a melee build, and for that purpose, the shotgun's main job is to juice your melee damage, so having something like Perfect Paradox or Wastelander with more ammo is just the better play. And as far as just a general utility weapon, I still prefer slugs over pellet shotguns. Now, obviously Heritage is the first weapon that comes to mind, but the reprised Sojourner's Tale also has some great PvE stuff on it. In fact, in my Onslaught runs, it's become my go-to special for my PKs with Huckleberry builds, something we may do a video on later. But if you do want to use this in PvE, then while barrel is largely up to you, I would strongly recommend going with a magazine that will bump your magazine capacity up. Then from there, if you're using a melee build, go with Pugilist and 1-2 punch. 1-2 punch for the extra juice to your melee damage, and Pugilist for melee energy on kills with a shotgun. Then the other alternative PvE-wise would be a DPS role. Now, just to be clear, the content in which a pellet shotgun is going to be useful for DPS is extremely limited. But against a boss like Crota, for example, it's not a bad backup if you run dry on heavy ammo or if it's a situation where you can integrate it into a DPS rotation. And for that purpose, I would go with either Reconstruction or Envious Arsenal with Cascade Point. Proc Cascade Point with one of your other weapons, then just dump the whole mag into a boss. And for this purpose, I do actually prefer Envious Arsenal since it gives you a more fluid rotation, particularly if you pair it with a bait and switch heavy weapon. And yes, I did try this. I used an Envious Arsenal and Cascade Point Prophet with an Envious Arsenal and bait and switch Bittersweet, and while I wouldn't really recommend this particular setup since you're using a GL as your heavy and a shotgun for your special, and the shotgun requires you to get close to the boss, meaning you have to back up whenever it's time to pull out the GL, it was still a lot of fun and the damage rotation was pretty damn smooth. Basically, I would use my primary to proc Cascade Point on the shotgun, dump Prophet's mag with Cascade Point, swap to the GL, which now has bait and switch procced, and dump its mag, then go back to my primary, shoot the boss to reload Prophet with Envious Arsenal and proc Cascade Point, then dump the mag with Cascade Point to proc Envious Arsenal and bait and switch on the GL, rinse and repeat. Now again, a shotgun and a GL don't really go together, but this is fun and there are certain places where a Cascade Shoddy would be helpful, such as the Night and Ghost Depths of the Deep, proc Cascade Point, dump Prophet's Mag into the boss, then swap to something like maybe Acreus and just go from there. You get the general idea. Shotguns are far from the DPS meta, but that sort of rotation is a lot of fun and more laid-back content. Now, of course, you do also have Volt Shot on here and Trench Barrel if you wanted to go that route, but in this case, I just don't really think they're worth it on this weapon. All that being said, pellet shotguns are still in kind of a weird spot in PvE, and though Cascade Point is fun, it does still feel very slow on a precision frame when compared to other archetypes. So, overall, Prophet is a very high-tier PvP weapon. For sure A-tier, potentially even S-tier, though for shotguns, really the kinetic slot is where all the S-tier options are, and quite frankly, the new comp shotgun is still just better than Prophet. But regardless, for PvP, it's a great shotgun if you're using a kinetic slot primary, and for PvE, it is a lot of fun if nothing else. And that is all from me today, Guardians. If you enjoyed this video, then do me a favor and hit that like button and leave me a comment with your thoughts on the new garden weapons. As always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button with the bell icon and check the description for my other links. For now, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians.